The sun streamed through the large bay window, casting a warm glow over the dining table, which was adorned with a delicate lace tablecloth. The aroma of freshly baked cake and savory dishes filled the air, mingling with the faint scent of spring flowers from the vase at the center. I glanced around the room, taking in the familiar family photo on the wall, a snapshot of happier times, where smiles masked the tensions that had been brewing beneath the surface of our family dynamic. Today was supposed to be a celebration, a day to honor mothers, and yet I felt a knot tightening in my stomach as I prepared for the inevitable. As we gathered around the table, I could sense the anticipation in the air, thick and palpable. My son raised his glass, a jovial grin on his face that belied the storm brewing within him. "To Mom, the best mother," he proclaimed, his voice ringing with false cheer. Laughter erupted around the table, but it quickly faded into an awkward silence as he continued. "But let's be honest, we all know it hasn't been perfect, right?" My heart sank, and I instinctively reached for my partner's hand, feeling the warmth of his reassuring grip. My mind raced with thoughts of how to navigate this moment, a fork in the road that could lead to either celebration or chaos. The laughter that had filled the room moments before was replaced by a heavy tension, as if the air itself had thickened in response to his words. I could see the expressions on my family's faces shift, confusion and discomfort replacing the forced smiles. I felt exposed, like a raw nerve laid bare. My son's words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken truths, and I knew that this was just the beginning of a confrontation I had feared for far too long. My chest tightened and I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself against the wave of emotions crashing over me. This was a moment that could redefine us, but at what cost? The dining room was dimly lit, the soft glow of candles flickering against the walls, casting shadows that danced as if echoing the unspoken tensions swirling around the table. I could smell the rich aroma of roasted chicken mingling with the sweetness of the dessert, but it was the heaviness in the air that stifled my appetite. My family gathered around, their faces illuminated with a mix of forced smiles and genuine concern, and I felt like an outsider in my own home. As I sat there, my heart raced at the thought of what lay beneath the surface. The last few months had been a tumultuous sea of emotions, and I was acutely aware of the fractures in our family dynamic. I glanced at my mother, Linda, her eyes darting towards me with an intensity that felt accusatory. Her attempts to control the atmosphere were palpable, and I could sense her discomfort with any hint of vulnerability. I knew that confronting her would only escalate the situation, yet the urge to speak my truth clawed at my insides. Mark, my partner, sat beside me, his hand resting on my knee, a silent gesture of support that both comforted and frustrated me. I wanted to lean into him, to draw strength from his unwavering presence, but the weight of my family's expectations felt like a shackle around my heart. I caught him trying to lighten the mood with a joke, but the laughter that followed felt hollow, echoing my own internal struggle. I looked around the table, catching glimpses of old family photos on the wall, each frame a reminder of happier times that felt like a distant memory. I remembered a time when we all gathered without the looming specter of resentment, but those days seemed to have vanished. The thought made my stomach churn, and I felt a wave of frustration wash over me. I wanted to keep the peace, but how could I do that when the truth was begging to be set free? As dinner progressed, the conversation grew stilted, each topic a tightrope walk over the chasm of our unresolved issues. I could feel the tension escalating, and I knew it was only a matter of time before the facade cracked. My thoughts spiraled as I mentally rehearsed what I might say, the fear of repercussions battling against the need for honesty. I could see Mark's concerned expression, a mirror of my own apprehension, and I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. Finally, the moment arrived. The clinking of cutlery ceased, and silence enveloped us like a heavy blanket. I felt my pulse quicken, my palms growing clammy as I prepared to address the elephant in the room. "We need to talk about what happened at the last gathering," I said, my voice trembling but resolute. The room seemed to hold its breath, and for a fleeting second I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this was the catalyst we needed to begin healing, even if it meant facing the storm head-on. The tension in the room was palpable, a thick blanket of discomfort that settled over us like an unwelcome fog. As I stood in the kitchen, the scent of rosemary and garlic wafted from the oven, mingling with the faint smell of burnt toast that Linda had attempted to salvage. The flickering light above cast shadows on the walls, emphasizing the cracks in our family's facade. I could hear the faint clinking of silverware from the dining room, punctuated by awkward laughter that felt forced, as if everyone was pretending we were not on the brink of a breakdown. Mark entered the kitchen, his brow furrowed, and I could see the discomfort etched on his features. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, his voice barely above a whisper. I wanted to assure him I was fine, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I just nodded, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on me. I glanced at him, searching for understanding, but all I saw was concern reflected in his eyes. The truth was, I was far from okay. I was grappling with the aftermath of my son's toast, which had exposed the ugly truths festering beneath our seemingly perfect family gatherings. A flash of memory struck me, a time when we had all sat around the same table, laughter overflowing, and the world felt right. How naive I had been then, believing that time would heal the wounds that had gone unacknowledged for too long. The laughter we had shared felt like a cruel reminder of what we had lost. Now the laughter echoed mockingly in my ears, reminding me of the resentment that simmered under our polite smiles. My heart raced as I thought about the words that hung in the air after my son's toast, each one a dagger that cut deeper than I could have imagined. I felt a surge of anger mixed with sadness. Why was it so difficult to express my feelings? I wanted to scream, to let everyone know how much this hurt, but fear held me back. What if my honesty shattered the already fragile bonds we had? I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart, but it felt like a losing battle. The thought of confronting Linda was particularly daunting. Her demeanor was always so defensive, ready to dismiss any notion that didn't fit her narrative. As if sensing my turmoil, Linda strode into the kitchen, her presence demanding attention. "What's wrong?" "You look like you've seen a ghost," she remarked, a hint of sarcasm lacing her tone. I bristled at her words, feeling a familiar irritation bubbling up. "Nothing is wrong, Linda. Just trying to gather my thoughts, that's all," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. Every interaction with her felt like walking on eggshells, each word carefully chosen to avoid igniting her wrath. "You keep saying you're fine, but it's obvious you're not. Just say what you need to say, Grace," she challenged, crossing her arms defiantly. The tension crackled between us, and I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks. I wanted to lash out, to tell her how her control over our family dynamics suffocated me, but the fear of her reaction held me back. I was stuck in a cycle of wanting to break free, and the overwhelming dread of what that might mean for us. Mark shifted uncomfortably, sensing the brewing storm. "Maybe we could all just take a deep breath," and he began, but I cut him off, my patience wearing thin. "It's not that simple, Mark," I snapped, the words escaping before I could rein them in. I could see the hurt in his eyes, and guilt washed over me, but I couldn't help it. I was frustrated and overwhelmed. Just then, my son's voice rang out from the dining room, breaking through the tension like a crack of thunder. "Can we just have a normal dinner without all the drama?" His words hung in the air, a stark reminder of the invisible lines we had crossed. I felt a wave of sadness wash over me. We were anything but normal, and it was painfully clear that the facade was crumbling. We had tried to keep the peace, but at what cost? In that moment, I knew I had to confront the truth, even if it meant risking everything. I looked at Mark, then back at Linda, and felt a surge of determination. I would no longer allow our family to be held hostage by unspoken grievances. The desire to speak my mind clashed with the fear of retribution, but I couldn't stay silent any longer. I took a deep breath, ready to face whatever came next, knowing it was time to address the elephant in the room, no matter the consequences. The silence in the aftermath of my son's toast felt as heavy as the humid spring air that clung to my skin. I could almost taste the bitterness of unspoken words lingering on my tongue, a sharp contrast to the sweetness of the cake that had been the centerpiece of our celebration. I glanced around the table, noting the tension etched on every face, each expression a reflection of the turmoil brewing beneath the surface. Mark sat beside me, his hand resting on my knee, a silent reminder of his support, yet even his presence felt inadequate in this sea of discord. The moment I had dreaded had come to fruition. I felt trapped, caught between the urge to address the elephant in the room and the instinct to retreat into silence. My heart raced as I replayed the toast in my mind, the way my son's words had sliced through the air, unveiling years of resentment that had festered like an untreated wound. I needed to act, to devise a plan to confront this new reality head-on, but the fear of the aftermath loomed large in my mind. "We need to talk about what just happened," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, the weight of each word pressing down on me. Sarah, my best friend, had remained a steady companion throughout this chaos, and now she leaned closer, her expression urging me to continue. "I can't let this go unresolved. It's time for us to address everything." Her eyes glimmered with determination, and I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me. "I'll help you, Grace. We can't allow this family to remain fractured. Let's come up with a plan to confront your mother together. It's time to face the truth, no matter how painful." As we spoke, a sense of resolve began to build within me. I pictured the family gathered again, the air thick with tension, yet filled with the possibility of healing. We could lay everything bare, the resentments, the betrayals, the years of silence. I could almost hear the sound of our voices clashing, the arguments echoing off the walls, but within that chaos lay the potential for clarity. After our discussion, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I gathered my thoughts, writing down the points I wanted to address, each word a step towards reclaiming my voice. My hands trembled slightly as I wrote, the pen gliding across the paper, leaving a trail of my fears and hopes. I needed to be ready for whatever my mother might throw at me, the woman who had long dictated the narrative of our family and whose influence still loomed large over my life. The night deepened outside, shadows creeping across the room as I prepared mentally for the showdown that awaited. I couldn't shake the anxiety gnawing at my stomach, but I also felt a strange sense of liberation in acknowledging my feelings. I was no longer willing to be a spectator in my own life. It was time to reclaim my power and confront my mother. The morning arrived with a renewed sense of urgency. I gathered the family in the living room, the air electric with anticipation and dread. Clara's expression was unreadable, a mask that concealed her emotions, but I could sense the storm brewing beneath. My heart pounded in my chest as I stood before them, ready to speak my truth. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation that would either fracture us further or begin to mend the rift that had long divided our family. The stakes had never been higher, and the outcome was uncertain, but I knew I had to try. As I opened my mouth to address the family, the weight of my words hung heavily in the air, poised to either shatter the facade of our relationships or lay the groundwork for healing. This was it, the moment I had been preparing for, the culmination of years of unexpressed resentment and longing for connection. I braced myself for the onslaught of emotions that would follow, ready to confront my past and hopefully forge a new path forward together. The aftermath of the confrontation left my heart heavy with uncertainty. I sat in my room, the soft light of the afternoon filtering through the sheer curtains, casting a warm glow on the remnants of our family dinner scattered across the table. The faint sound of laughter from the living room felt like an echo from another world, a bittersweet reminder of the joy that once filled our home. I could still feel the tension hanging in the air, thick and suffocating, as I replayed the events of the night in my mind, the hurtful words, the silent stares, the emotional chasms that had only widened. Mark knocked softly before entering, his expression a mix of concern and support. I could see the way his brow furrowed as he took in the sight of me, lost in thought. "How are you holding up?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I shrugged, feeling the weight of my emotions pressing down on me like a lead blanket. I wanted to tell him that I felt shattered, that every word spoken during that family dinner echoed in my mind, but the words remained lodged in my throat. "I'm trying to figure it out, but it feels like we're all just avoiding the real issues," I finally replied, my voice shaky. I could see his jaw tighten in response, the frustration of the situation mirrored in his eyes. "You're not alone in this, Grace. We can work through it together. Just take it one step at a time," he encouraged, reaching out to squeeze my hand, grounding me in that moment. I appreciated his support, but the gnawing fear that our family might never heal remained. As I gazed at the family photos on my desk, each one a snapshot of happier times, I could feel a tear slip down my cheek. Memories flooded my mind, vivid and painful. I remembered the laughter shared during birthdays, the warmth of family gatherings, and the comfort of knowing we were all there for each other. Now, those memories felt like distant dreams, overshadowed by the confrontation that had exposed our deepest wounds. Could we ever return to that place of connection and understanding? The following days were filled with attempts at normalcy. I cautiously rejoined family activities, but each interaction felt like walking on eggshells. Clara's silence was deafening, a heavy presence that loomed over our conversations. During one particularly quiet dinner, I caught her glancing at me, her expression unreadable. I wanted to reach out to bridge the gap that had formed, but every time I opened my mouth, the fear of further hurting her silenced my words. "It's okay to talk about it, you know," Mark said one evening as we washed the dishes together, the rhythmic clinking of plates providing a backdrop to our conversation. "You have to express how you feel. Holding it in will just make things worse." His words resonated with me, but the thought of confronting Clara again sent a shiver down my spine. What if she didn't want to hear what I had to say? The tension in the house bubbled beneath the surface, and I could feel the cracks deepening with each passing moment. My heart ached with the realization that we were all struggling in our own ways, trapped in a cycle of hurt and misunderstanding. I often found myself reflecting on the moments I had taken for granted, the shared laughter, the simple joys of family life. I wanted to reclaim that feeling, but the road to reconciliation felt daunting. Then came the moment I had been both dreading and yearning for. Clara and I found ourselves alone in the living room one evening, the darkness outside creeping in, wrapping us in an unfamiliar silence. I could feel my heart pounding against my ribs, the tension palpable. It was now or never. I took a deep breath, gathering my courage. "Mom, can we talk?" My voice trembled, a fragile whisper in the stillness of the room. Clara looked at me, her eyes reflecting a mixture of vulnerability and sadness. "I think we need to, Grace," she replied softly, and in that moment I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me. Perhaps this was the beginning of our healing, a chance to confront the past together and find a way forward. As we sat down, I realized that the conversation ahead would not be easy, but it was necessary. I was ready to face the pain, to acknowledge the hurt we both carried, and to begin the slow process of rebuilding the trust that had been shattered. This was our moment, and I was determined to make it count. With tentative words, we began to navigate the complexities of our emotions, each sentence a step toward closure, each pause a promise of hope. Slowly, I felt the weight of bitterness begin to lift, the possibility of healing taking root in the space between us. The journey ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but as I gazed into Clara's eyes, I knew we were finally on the path to peace. The living room felt like a pressure cooker, the air charged with unresolved emotions as I faced my mother, Clara. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the dust motes swirling around us, but the warmth couldn't penetrate the chill that had settled between us. I could hear the faint ticking of the clock, each second a reminder of the urgency to address the chaos that had erupted within our family. My heart thudded in my chest, a mix of fear and determination surging through me. Clara sat across from me, her arms crossed defensively, her expression a mix of anger and hurt. I swallowed hard, my palms clammy as I prepared to confront the issues that had been buried for too long. "Mom, we need to talk about what happened at dinner. I can't let this go unanswered," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor I felt within. I took a deep breath, willing myself to push through the fear of her reaction. Her eyes flashed with defiance, and I braced myself for her response. "You think you can just waltz in here and demand answers after everything?" Clara shot back, her voice rising. I could feel the heat of her anger, but beneath it lay a fissure of vulnerability that gave me hope. "I know I messed up, but I want to understand your side too," I replied, my heart racing as I held her gaze. As I spoke, I could see the tension in her shoulders begin to ease, even if just slightly. It was a small victory, but it encouraged me to continue. "I don't want to keep pretending everything is fine when it's not. I love you and I want to fix this, but we can't if we don't confront the truth," I added, my voice softening, hoping to reach her heart. Mark stood in the background, his presence a stabilizing force, and I could feel his support bolstering my resolve. I glanced at him and he nodded slightly, a silent reminder that I wasn't alone in this fight. Clara's expression wavered, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of recognition in her eyes. "I just don't want to be hurt again, Zoe," she whispered, her voice cracking under the weight of her emotions. It was the opening I needed. "Neither do I, Mom, but if we don't take the risk to be honest, we'll keep hurting each other," I said, my heart racing as I pressed on. The air was thick with unspoken words, but I felt an unexpected courage rising within me. This was the turning point. As Clara's defenses began to crumble, I realized that this confrontation was just the beginning of our journey toward healing. I had to be brave, I had to stand up for myself and my desire for a better relationship with her. The path ahead would be challenging, filled with uncertainty, but it was a path I was finally ready to take. The weight of the moment hung heavy in the air, and I knew this was the moment that would define us moving forward. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever came next, knowing that facing the truth was the only way we could reclaim our family bond. The evening sun cast long shadows across the living room, where the air felt thick with unresolved tension, like the calm before a storm. I sat on the couch, fingers nervously tapping against the fabric, as I shared ideas with Sarah, my best friend and confidant. "We need to approach this delicately but firmly," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, as if the walls themselves were listening. The scent of freshly brewed coffee lingered in the air, a bittersweet reminder of our attempts at comfort amidst chaos. Sarah leaned forward, her eyes sparkling with determination, yet I could sense her own apprehension. "What if we make a list of everything that needs to be addressed? We can categorize the issues, big and small, so we don't miss anything important," she suggested, her tone mixing enthusiasm with caution. I nodded, feeling a flicker of hope ignite within me. Perhaps we could finally bring the hidden grievances into the light. As we brainstormed, I glanced at the family photo wall, images of happier times that seemed to mock our current turmoil. My heart ached with the weight of past memories, the laughter and warmth now overshadowed by resentment. I shook my head slightly, trying to focus. "We need to ensure everyone feels heard, but we can't let them dominate the conversation. It's about reclaiming our family narrative, not just appeasing everyone," I said, my resolve strengthening. Mark entered the room, his brow furrowed in thought, sensing the gravity of our discussion. "What's the plan?" he asked, his voice steady yet filled with concern. I could see the tension in his posture, the way he held himself as if preparing for battle. I explained our approach, watching as he processed the information, nodding slowly. "I think that's a solid start, but we need to be prepared for pushback, especially from Clara," he cautioned, his eyes narrowing slightly. The thought of facing my mother again sent a shiver down my spine. Clara had always been a force of nature, and I could almost feel her disapproval hovering in the air. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my determination solidifying. "This won't be easy, but we owe it to ourselves to try. We need to confront the issues head-on, no more avoiding the hard conversations," I declared, my voice stronger than I felt inside. As the discussion continued, I could see the flickering light of hope in Sarah's eyes, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of purpose. We were crafting a plan, a strategy to face the storm that had been brewing for far too long. It was a step toward healing, and though my heart raced with nervousness, I knew we were ready to take action. This was the moment we would reclaim our family's story, and I was determined to see it through, no matter the cost. The living room was a battleground, charged with unspoken emotions and the remnants of past grievances that hung in the air like a dense fog. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the faces of my family, each expression a reflection of the tension that had been building for years. I stood at the center, my heart pounding in rhythm with the silence, the moment heavy with anticipation. Today was the day I would confront the truth, the pain, and the bitterness that had festered beneath our family's surface. As I looked around, I could see Clara's face, her features taut and defensive, arms crossed tightly over her chest. The faint smell of coffee lingered, a desperate attempt to mask the anxiety that permeated the room. I took a deep breath, my palms clammy against the fabric of my dress, and began to speak, my voice trembling yet resolute. We need to talk about everything that has led us to this moment. I can't keep pretending that things are okay when they are not. My words hung in the air, a spark igniting the smoldering embers of our family tensions. Clara's eyes narrowed, and I could see the flicker of fear and defiance in her gaze. "What do you mean, Grace? You think you can just throw everything on the table and expect us to fix it?" Her voice rose, laced with the hurt of years of bottled-up emotions. I pressed on, feeling the weight of the moment push me forward. "No, I don't expect it to be easy, but I can't keep living in this shadow of resentment. I need you to understand how your actions have affected me, how they've shaped my feelings of inadequacy and anger. I want to heal, but I can't do it alone." My heart raced as I spoke, the fear of her rejection looming large, yet I felt a flicker of courage swell within me. The room erupted in voices, each family member chiming in with their own frustrations and fears. It was a cacophony of emotions, a release of pent-up feelings that had been suffocating us all. I watched as Clara's expression shifted from anger to vulnerability, her defenses slowly crumbling. She began to speak, her voice softening. "I never meant to hurt you, Grace. I just wanted to protect you from the pain I experienced." In that moment, I saw the cracks in her facade, the truth behind her actions. It was a reminder that we were both just trying to navigate the complexities of our relationship. I reached out, my hand trembling as I placed it gently over hers. "I know, Mom, but we need to be honest with each other. I want to understand you, and I want you to understand me. We can't move forward without facing the truth together." The intensity in the room began to dissipate, replaced by an air of tentative hope. Clara's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, a balm to the wounds we had inflicted on each other. The conversation continued, weaving through the fabric of our shared history, the laughter and the tears, each moment a step toward healing. As we spoke, I realized that this confrontation was just the beginning. The aftermath would be filled with challenges, but I felt a sense of release, a weight lifting off my shoulders. We had opened the door to honesty, and though it was scary, it was also liberating. The fear of losing my family had transformed into a determination to mend what had been broken, and I knew that together, we could navigate the path to forgiveness and understanding. The atmosphere in our home had shifted, infused with a tentative hope that felt fragile yet promising. As I sat at the dining table, the remnants of our earlier confrontation lingered in the air like a thick fog, but the warmth of the afternoon sun filtering through the kitchen window began to clear the heaviness that had settled around us. The sounds of laughter and chatter filled the space, a stark contrast to the silence that had enveloped us just days before. I could smell the familiar aroma of freshly baked bread, a comforting reminder of simpler times, and it reminded me that despite our turmoil, we still had moments of connection to cherish. Mark moved around the kitchen, his movements fluid as he prepared a light meal, his presence a grounding force amidst the chaos. I watched him for a moment, my heart swelling with gratitude. He had been my anchor through this storm, patiently supporting me while allowing me the space to confront my family's issues. I could see the tension in his shoulders easing as he caught my eye, offering a reassuring smile that spoke volumes. It was a reminder that together we could navigate the complexities of our family dynamics, no matter how challenging. As the family began to gather for dinner, I felt a mix of anticipation and nervousness. Clara entered the room, her expression softer than it had been in days, and for the first time I saw a flicker of vulnerability behind her guarded demeanor. She moved toward me, and I instinctively reached for her hand, a silent gesture of reconciliation. Her fingers intertwined with mine, and in that moment I felt the weight of our shared history, our struggles, and our determination to move forward together. Dinner unfolded with a newfound warmth, the conversations flowing more freely as we shared stories and laughter. I could see Clara's laughter returning, her eyes sparkling with a hint of the joy I had missed so dearly. It was as if the act of coming together had begun to heal the wounds that had festered between us. As we clinked our glasses together for a toast, I felt a surge of emotion welling up inside me. This was not just a toast to family, but a pledge to confront our past and work toward a future filled with understanding. As I raised my glass, I spoke from the heart, my voice steady yet filled with emotion. To new beginnings and the courage to face our truths together. May we always find our way back to each other, no matter how lost we may feel at times. The sincerity of my words hung in the air, and I could see the impact they had on my family, the weight of unspoken burdens beginning to lift. Clara's eyes glistened with unshed tears, and in that moment I knew we were on the path toward healing. After dinner, as the family lingered around the table, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The chaos of the past few days had not disappeared entirely, but I was beginning to understand that healing was not a destination but a journey. I glanced at Clara, who was laughing with Mark, and I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me. We had weathered a storm, and though the scars of our past would remain, we were learning to navigate the waters of forgiveness and acceptance together. I took a deep breath, allowing the warmth of connection to envelop me, knowing that we were finally